screen. Do that.
All right, I'm calling the meeting to order at, sheesh, just lost my screen, at 6:03 p.m. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe School Pledge. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Casey?
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Biggie?
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Okay. And moving on to
Okay, roll call. Frank,
I am here.
Sam,
Here.
Katrin.
Present.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Katrin.
Yes.
All right, Casey, is anyone there for public comment?
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform or raise their hand if attending in person. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda. So if any members of the public would make to make a comment, you can do the raise hand tool. And this time it looks like there is no public comment.
Thank you, Casey. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special board meeting minutes of April 25th. All in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Katrin.
Yes.
That's a yes for me. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special board meeting minutes of May 2nd, 2023. All in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Katrin.
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Moving on to the ED report, Chris, go ahead.
okay. We're moving us quickly through. All right. So, well, good evening, everybody. And we always do start off with enrollment. We are currently at 400 students. That's 2 less than reported in the previous month. Our budget is currently based on 391 students. We've had relatively little enrollment change. We're 9 students above budget with P2 approaching. And to give you an idea of where things stand by grade level, as opposed to our original projections at the start. Okay.
Can you go back?
What's that?
Can you go back for 1 second?
Sure. Any question or comment? Okay. Right. So where we stand right now with regards to Prop 39, we have now made the formal application for the alternative agreement. We have gotten a And that is for additional classrooms. If you recall, we were offered 17 classrooms. We are asking for 19, and giving up some previous shared space as we've done in previous years. And that is, so we're asking for the same deal, basically. And we have received word that they have, that they are finalizing it and processing, but it has not yet been approved. So we're still in the waiting mode, but they did say that this week we should be getting, something should be coming to us. So we're waiting on that. We did move forward with furniture order, internet connections for next year. Obviously, we don't know about the 2 extra rooms at the moment, but in terms of furniture, we were able to do that. So those things are proceeding apace. I was asked earlier in the year to review our campus safety monitor position, and to stop and reflect on this as we were heading into the budget season. And as we are going into budget season, beginning this evening, we'll be looking at that. Wanted to circle back on this. This position we hired for, and it began in March. We have been maintaining a daily log of interactions, so that we can track and compare as to what this employee does during the day. And there's dozens and dozens of interactions that happen, but many of them are just friendly, hi, hello, welcoming kind of things. So beyond simple greetings, an average of 23 daily interactions, 8 with adults, 15 with students. And what we found is what we think is the biggest benefit of this program has been the coordination regarding student supervision and coordination with MDRMS. Our campus safety monitor has been kind of integral in working with the other safety monitors that are with Marina Del Rey, and also working with the administration at Marina Del Rey in terms of kids not being where they're supposed to be, and getting those reported and carrying that, and making sure our students are where they're supposed to be. But that has been a big benefit that we didn't really see coming. The other major benefit of this is a visible assurance of monitoring in hallways throughout the day for staff and for families. And I'm going to have to rely on anecdotal, but it has been repeatedly remarked that, oh, it's so nice to see someone who's watching and watching over. So it's, I know we initially brought this up as thinking about, safety and the space between the buzzer gate and the office, and that's certainly been the focus. But we found that it's more than that. And watching over our MYP program as students transfer from class to class, to have someone who knows all the kids and knows where they're supposed to be and moves them along and is there and designated for that has been extremely helpful. And the other is with the younger students and bathroom monitoring. In the 2 months or so that we've had this position, we have seen a marked decrease in problems in our bathroom where things were either left a mess or there was misbehavior in the bathrooms or those types of things. And particularly this is with our youngest students. And so the fact that we're able to monitor really with our ears for the bathroom, this has been a huge help. So this is something that as we come to the budget and talk about plans for next year, this is something that I have included in the budget. And I am giving it my full and total endorsement. I think this is essential now that we have a middle school, and in just today's day and age, that we need to have this safety monitor position in place. So wanted to make sure that that was revisited. Any questions about that before we dive into a few other things? Okay,
Can I ask something?
sure.
Thanks. So seeing this in light of the other recommendations that were approved at the same time, is there a view as to the success as a whole of the other recommendations? Have the other ones been implemented with the additional, cameras and those sorts of things?
So yes, the cameras have been initiated, and they're in place. We're working through some hiccups with regard to charging, because it's a daily charge, and so we found that it was working, and then we had some battery issues. So we're getting a replacement battery that is coming. It is functional and it does work, and but I've got to say that's not it's not a game changer. In terms of it gives us one more kind of tool, but it's not necessarily a game changer the way that this position we feel is. Really makes a marked difference in the feeling of safety on the campus.
Thanks.
Okay, we have coming up summer school, and I'm gonna actually let Casey, you've been working on this, and I'm gonna let you run with it. Tell us a little bit about what's happening right when school ends.
Yeah, so we are continuing with the same summer school program that we've done since returning from distance learning. So small group classes, 1 at each grade level. So it'll be about 15 students in a class is what we're aiming for. And the classes will start on the 14th. So the 12th is the last day of school. That's a Monday. Tuesday, the 13th is a teacher work day with no students to get rooms ready for the summer. And then summer school will start up on Wednesday, the 14th and run all the way through until the end of June. So June 30th. It's about 12 days because there's one day that is no school. That's on June 19th. And then basically it's an 8:30 to 12 o'clock program, focuses on language arts and math, also with some German language arts support brought in as well, but really English language arts and math are the two main areas of focus. There'll be breakfast and lunch, just like we have on a regular school day, but those will be grab and go rather than sit at the lunch area and eat a lunch together. So it's a total of about 4 hours per day for the students, and then they have a little recess break to kind of break up the morning there. Our teachers, we have a great selection of teachers who are going to be teaching the classes, so a range of grade level experience that they've worked with, and we're keeping the teachers as close to their current grade level or grade levels that they've worked with recently as possible to keep consistency with instruction. And then when we come back from the summer break and are starting up the 2023-24 school year, we also will do 5 days of an on-campus summer camp through ARC, which is the same group that we've been using for the spring and the winter camps that we've done already this year. And so that will go from end of July until August 4th before the teachers return that following week. The students that we're inviting, it's based on highest need. So our students at most at risk for needing intervention and additional supports are invited first. And then we go up the list rather than down the list as we hear whether people will be participating or not.
Can you define at-risk student again?
So we're using our iReady as kind of like the baseline. So the latest iReady results. So starting with students who are 2 or more grade levels below in language arts or math, but then we also have teacher input as well. So we shared a list with staff of here are the kids that we would invite based off of their iReady scores, and then ask teachers to give us input, whether they feel like, yep, those are the kids we want, or this kid did better on iReady, but really could benefit from additional support. And so we can add the kids to the list that way as well.
So that would mean basically 20% of every fifth student is at risk at our school. Is that a normal number?
It's not, so we go through the list. So we're starting with those that are 2 or more below, but that doesn't mean that we're only inviting students who are that far below grade level.
Okay.
Are we moving on to the
The next on
performance
my
measures? Yep.
is our Goethe exclusive student achievement measures. I had it on a different slide deck, so let me get it started.
You had it there up there under view slideshow. Slideshow. One down. Ooh.
Just can't read. Thank you, Frank. Okay, if you recall in the fall, we agreed upon some things that we were going to look at twice a year. And we're able to look at demographics, grade distribution, iReady scores, LPAC, CASP scores. Still working on the PYP grade distribution and also the German assessment. So those are 2 works in progress that are still underway. But starting with demographics, just to give you where we stand as of today, you can see that we have, out of our 400 students, that 8.7% are special needs students with an IEP. Our English learners stand at just above 15%. And you can see our ethnicities that range from our Hispanic, Latino population from 25.6%, Black or African American 11.4%, white 40.4%, Asian 7.2%, and multiple ethnicities at 15%. So it gives you kind of a quick snapshot. We also updated the quick snapshot of where do our students live. And I know this was of interest the last time, certainly related to how far it takes kids, how far they're coming, and that can certainly affect attendance. It can certainly affect morning commutes and all those kind of things, but it also affects, as we're looking eventually to be getting our own space, and if we need to relocate, we want to be in an area where the people where people are. So this is an important one to be keeping in mind. This slide, which is our grade distributions, looking at our A through F grades in middle school. We updated this with the most recent grades, which was after the end of first semester. So that's since we last saw this, and it looks pretty similar. You can see back in 2020, 2021, which when we were on, we had just come out, we're coming out of, we're in distance learning for a lot of that. The grade distributions were in far worse shape. And we were having a lot more students who were struggling and at risk according to the grades. And that kind of righted itself in the following year. And that trend appears to be continuing, possibly improving just a little better in the current year, 22-23. So I think that's a pretty healthy spot to be. and whereas the first chart is not a healthy spot to be. So I'm glad we've moved in the right direction there.
So these are percentages, right?
These are percentages, correct? Yeah. The main focus in the spring is going to be looking at our iReady results. And that's because we have fall, winter, and spring results to look at. When we looked at this the last time, we just had the fall, which was where did they start the year? And it didn't give us, we did some comparisons to the previous year. But the iReady results give us an important snapshot. Keeping in mind that the spring results are testing that our students took in March. So it's information from March. And the information that we have, we try to use it as a guide, and teachers try to use it as a guide for what do we need to focus on to get kids ready for the big test, which is the CASP test. That CASP test is currently underway. We're actually in our third week. We're in a makeup week for CASP testing in most grade levels. And so that's going along. The testing itself is going along fine. But the results that are here are important. And Casey's going to be kind of walking you through some slides that are coming up right now. It was a little bit of a dip from where we were a year prior on this particular test. And so keep in mind that our teachers were aware of this within their own classes and have been working based on this information. We've in fact had a training or workshop that our teachers did with iReady to look at the results and look at their own kids that happened about 2 months ago. So we've been working on these results. But I'm going to pass it along to Casey, and you can kind of walk us through where some areas that we want to see improvement.
Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, what's nice about the spring is now we can look at the fall, winter, and spring results for iReady. And so we'll go through ELA first, and then the math will follow the same structure in terms of the graphs that you'll see. So the first one is just entire school. So this is kindergarten through 8th grade. That first column is the fall testing results. The middle column is winter, and then the column on the right is spring. So you can see we're getting growth the way we want it to, where the percentage of students that are above grade level are getting bigger as we go throughout the year. Same with the number of students who are on grade level. And then those yellow, blue, and orange bands getting smaller as we go. One thing just to note, when you compare the winter to the spring, you see 5 students who are in that 2 level, or not 5 students, 5% of students in that 2 or more, versus 6 in the spring. But if you look at the 3 or more grade levels below, it's 7 down to 5. So we have upward movement there from students who were 3 or more grade levels below going up into only 2 or more below.
Okay. And this is reading, correct?
Yes. And then, as Chris mentioned, when we compare last year's spring final results with this year's spring final results, overall pretty similar, but we do have a dip where you see last year we had only 9% of students who are at risk for tier 3 intervention. This year we're at 11%, and then 25 versus the 22. So nothing a big swing, but it is lower numbers than we had last year. So that's something that we've been looking at as a staff to see what can we do to help bring these numbers up and get back to the type of growth we were seeing the last year. And then this has every single grade level. There are 3 columns for each grade level. So down on the bottom, you'll see, and I don't know, Chris, do you want to use your mouse to kind of hover around? The KG would be kindergarten, and then FWS is fall, winter, and spring. So for each grade level, there are 3 columns with data. So if you look just 3 at a time, you can see the progress that we've had across all grade levels, where the percentage of students who are on or above grade level is getting bigger, and the percentage of students who are below grade level is getting smaller in each of those bands. You can see 3rd grade, we started really strong and then continued with lots of students meeting or exceeding grade level there. So 3rd grade was one that really stands out, but also 2nd grade. If you look at 2nd grade, they had a ton of progress as they went throughout the year, getting up to 63% from 45% who were on grade level, and then from 2% above grade level up to 19%.
Question.
Mhm.
In middle school, 6, 7, and 8, the level of students below grade level is higher, especially in the 3rd tier, the bottom tier,
Mhm.
and through the elementary school, and it really starts in 3rd grade, then we start mitigating it. So are these students new students coming to the school who are below grade?
So you won't be able to tell from this data. And also this doesn't show like one group of students coming from last year into this year. This only shows this single grade level. So we're just looking at one group of kids in 4th grade. So it's not that our last year's 3rd graders now have gotten so much support in 4th grade that those numbers are so low. Hopefully that is the case when we compare those two. But what this graph shows is this year's 3rd graders, this year's 4th graders, this year's 5th graders, and so on. Something to note about the middle school grades though, 6th grade, we have a lot of new students who came in because we went to 2 classes for 6th grade. So only a portion of those are students coming from our 5th grade into middle school. Also in 7th and 8th grade, remember there's only 1 small class at each of those grade levels. So that's only about 20 kids. So any like 1 student will make a big change in the percentages there. So that, especially in 7th and 8th grade, is something to keep in mind for those.
Yeah, I think you need to look at probably have the absolute numbers of students there, so you have a better visual. Otherwise, it tells the wrong story. Okay.
Casey, can I ask a question? If we go back, or I guess we could look at this one too. So I was going to ask a question about, below grade level, because if I recall, in kindergarten, students can't test below grade level. And then, in 1st grade, is there any bottom level that they can't test below? And same for 2nd grade. Does that account for the fact that we don't have any students 3 or more grade levels below in either of those years?
No. So you're totally right. In kindergarten, you can't actually be below grade level because you're either coming in with no knowledge, as we would expect some kindergartners to, or you're coming in knowing some or more kindergarten content. 1st grade, you could only be 1 grade level below because kindergarten is the lowest. 2nd grade, you could be 2 grade levels below. So we could have 2nd graders that would be in that in the blue section there. But then it's not till 3rd grade where you're going to start seeing those 3 or more grade levels below, because now they have 3 grade levels below where they are. The other thing that it's important to keep in mind is once students fall below grade level, we still want them to make that upward growth, but that might not get them out of the below grade level and into the green on level band. So as we see growth with this like 3 or more grade levels below and 2 or more grade levels below, they may be making individually tons of growth, but it's not enough to get them out of that 3, like maybe they were 4 grade levels below, now they're only 3 grade levels below, but they would still be in that same bracket there.
And then these are the students that you'd first target for invitations to summer school, for example.
Yes, yeah, and who get the intervention and support during the school year as well.
I'm going to wait until the Presentation is complete. So how many more slides do you have, Casey?
There's quite a few, right, Chris? We're almost done with the ELA and then we'll go into the math.
If it's all right for time's sake, with the other board members, if we could just go through all of them, and then we'll quickly come back to the ones we want to talk about, if that's okay. All right, go ahead, Casey.
Okay. So then the next graph shows same data, so fall, winter, spring results, but now this is broken down by student group. So it'll start with that very first selection of 3 is all students. So you can kind of compare that with the different student groups. Then it goes to female, male, Asian, Black or African American, white, Hispanic or Latino, multi, so 2 or more races, ELL and SPED. The little dash where there's that green 100% for all of them, that means a student is not connected with any of these demographics. And so it's one student who has maybe declined to state their ethnicity, and so they're not going to fall into any of the other student groups there.
Yeah,
So
that is a decline to state.
So same, we see positive growth going from the fall to the spring with every single student group. However, the Hispanic, Latino, and English learner and special education students, you can see they're starting from a smaller percentage of students who are on or above grade level in comparison to the other student groups. So those are kind of our areas that we focus on for support throughout the year, and typically are the groups that have needed additional reading support in years past as well. And then moving on to math, same as with reading for the overall score, we're seeing from fall to winter to spring, that positive growth of students who are on or above grade level, and then the decrease of students who are below grade level. And then similar, just like we saw with the comparison for reading from spring of last year to spring of this year, pretty similar numbers, but again, a little decrease in terms of the number of students who we have who are on or above grade level versus those needing intervention and support. And then again, this is looking by grade level, so kindergarten all the way at the left, moving up to 8th grade. Again, every single grade level had positive growth as they go throughout the year. 2nd grade had a ton of growth. You can see they went from 25% of students on grade level to 88% of students in math. So that's just fantastic. But a similar trend is what we saw with reading, where in those upper grades, 6th, 7th, 8th, the percentages are not as great for the students above or on grade level as we are seeing in the elementary school. And then, Chris, I think this one's kind of going off the screen a little bit. Maybe if
Sorry.
we're missing the SPED.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can adjust it.
Okay. So again, with our student groups, the first column is all, but then it's broken down by gender and then by ethnicity. And we still have that one student that has declined to state. The reason there's nothing in spring is because they didn't take the spring iReady assessment. But again, similar growth where every student group is getting growth in their math, not as much as in reading. So overall, our students had bigger growth in reading than they did in math. And then in the math area, our student groups who had the smallest numbers who were on or above grade level were our Black or African American, Hispanic, English learner, and special ed. And then just kind of summarizing what we talked about already is that we did have a drop from last year's spring results to this year's spring results in both reading and math in terms of the percentage of kids who are on or above grade level. But we do see growth for all student groups, all grade levels in both reading and math, and that our MYP, that growth is not looking as similar as PYP, but we also have those smaller numbers there. What was really interesting was last year's spring seemed to correlate really well with last year's CASP scores. So when we are finished with our CASP testing and we get those results, either in the summer or the beginning of next year, we'll need to look really closely at our current CASP test scores with these spring iReady results to see what the correlation is there.
And I'll just go through the remaining slides very quickly, and then you can circle back with questions. Because a number of these you've seen already before. Our LPAC, which is our English learner testing, just want to give a refresh of where we stand on that. And we are up. So 89% of English learners are in the top two categories, moderately developed or well developed. And that's up from 82% the prior year. And the percentage of English learners that are minimally developed in the lower two categories decreased from 18 to 11. So that's an important piece. It is one of the things we are measured on by the state, measured as a school by the state, is how are English learners performing, and these numbers are very high in terms of the state. And the other thing that was very high in terms of the state was our CASP score. So these are the ones that you've seen already. The kids are taking the new CASP test right now, even as we speak. We've started 2 weeks ago, and but the progress that we saw, we'll be able to see these results come fall. The one that they're taking right now, but this did give us a positive results. These are the ones you did see in the fall, so this isn't anything new in terms of English language arts, and then also mathematics proficiency. And again, the only bullet I really added on here was that we need to make that comparison again with iReady versus CASP, because CASP is the one that counts for kind of the state. It counts for our charter renewal. It counts for all of that, and we want there to be a correlation, but we also want to be able to use the data in iReady to improve our CASP scores. So that's basically where that is. So any questions about any parts of the Goethe exclusive student achievement measures or iReady in particular?
So if I may start this off, thank you. That was very informative. I appreciate the detail. I especially found it very interesting, the section on the notes regarding the iReady section and the overall notes and highlights for each of the areas. I know this is still I know it's a journey, right? Where are we with specific to KPIs specific to IB, specific to language immersion?
The language ones, that's one of the pieces that we're trying to work through into Unified Insights, using the A1, A2, and B1 scores, and
The exams, right? Yep.
Yeah. So that is in progress, but not in a completed state. And the other piece of it that is also being brought in is the scores for or the comparison of grades in the PYP was the other area.
Mm-hmm.
And so you hit exactly the two things that are still unfinished. And the grades in the PYP, there are grades that we're going to identify that are specific to IB, that teachers give a grade that is, how are you doing on this particular area? And that's what we want to be able to have compared, but we have not been able to get that completed through Unified Insights yet.
Okay, so we'll put a pin on that, make it part of the organization's objectives in the following years. How about, so if you wouldn't mind just going back to the CASP scores, I'm sorry, just quickly, appreciate it. Great, very, very much what we're used to. I think one of the requirements that we had, that we were going to use the CASP scores in comparison to local schools, especially local like charter schools in the area as a performance benchmark. Have we made any progress there?
I do have a comparison that I could share with the board, which does it basically looks at surrounding schools and makes that comparison. So that is something I could share with the board, either just as a follow-up to this and email it to you, or provide it at the next meeting.
That would be great if you wouldn't mind actually just putting it into your ED report for the next meeting. I think from a standpoint of just competitive advantage, like it would be great. I think that is something that we want to see in the Goethe exclusive student achievement measures, which is, yeah, we have this core program which is unmatched or unrivaled in the local area, but CASP I think is a benchmark which is a good highlight to have. The last thing I'll say is I appreciated the highlights. I know you guys call them notes. Just from my experience, it would be great as you present each of the sheets. I know this is still a work in progress, but as you present each of the data metrics, it would be great to start with the highlights and then dig deeper. I found myself kind of looking through it and saying like, oh, what about this and what about that and what about that? And then, Casey brought all the talking points towards the end. I just appreciate towards the beginning. But so, yeah, I love it. I definitely think we're on the right path. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Casey. Your work shows. With that, I'll hand it off to Frank.
Already asked a lot of questions, so thank you. I'll pass.
Sam.
Thanks. Going back to the iReady, and I think we can talk either English language or math. I think we saw in both of them that there were the same impacted communities of students who had the lowest scores. And so I know we've talked before about some of the intervention efforts and remediation efforts. Do we have any year-on-year work to show whether or not this year's remediation efforts have impacted those scores at all? And also, with Nazmia being out, and I know there's some staffing work happening to gap on the special ed component, are we putting those students any more at risk, or are we, still serving them to make sure that they keep advancing in their academics?
That's a really good question, and I don't think we have the full answer. I think with the iReady scores having a bit of a drop from the previous year, we're going to try to triangulate on that and figure out what's at play here. Is it different kids? Is it one of the interventions, or we're not, those pieces? But I think the other thing that I'm just going to suggest that is really the focus, and it'll be in the fall, is when the rubber hits the road on CASP scores. That's the one that is really going to count in terms of judgment by the state, by LAUSD for certain. I think in terms of intervention, we've been, throwing whatever we can do and kind of seeing what sticks. And now it's finding out what's sticking that actually works. So I think we're not there yet, Sam. But I think it's the CASP results that we really need to hyper scrutinize on that front.
Chris, could I also just mention that one thing that's not in here but has a huge impact on student achievement is attendance. So even if we have students who aren't going to be flagged as being chronically absent, maybe because they're doing independent studies, we have a lot of absences still this year, continuing from last year, ever since we've come back from distance learning. So our attendance, while it might not show in our average daily attendance reports because we're doing so good on the independent studies, the independent study is not comparable to being in school and getting the lesson or the intervention itself. So one thing I think that would be also really interesting to look at is the comparison of these students who are below grade level and their attendance. Are they coming to school regularly? Are they in their intervention classes? Or are they out on independent study? Or are they just out and not getting any work to catch up on?
I would totally agree with that, Casey. That's, I think really, if there's a difference between before and after, in terms of before we were in distance learning and then coming back and after, it's been the overall attendance rates. And that is masked somewhat by independent study. But like you said, independent study does not make up for what you gain in the classroom by any stretch.
Thanks.
Katrin?
Thank you. My questions were answered throughout the conversation.
All right, Chris, I think the CASP thing for local areas, that would be really, really interesting, but we won't dwell on it. If you wouldn't mind bringing that to the next board meeting, I'd appreciate it. Please continue.
Okay. Okay. Find the right thing. Okay, and finally, last thing that is in my executive director report is about interim leadership during the ED search. As we've talked through and are launching into this process, and we've come to the realization that to do the job right, there needs to be enough time to do it right, which means there's going to be a gap between the time when I leave as executive director and when a new executive director will be on board. And so as we've shared with the board, we really feel strongly about that we can develop, we've developed an internal support plan. So not with someone from outside coming in for a month or 2 months or 3 months or whatever it would be, that it will be far more effective to have our internal Goethe leadership develop this or run this plan. So it falls on our 2 key leaders, and I'm going to actually and then our TOSAs and assistant principals, and then other supports. So let's take a look at what this is gonna be. So the key leadership here is between Casey and Biggie, and what we did is divide up and specify who is in charge and responsible for particular areas. So Casey will continue her focus on the academic program and all of student services, so that everything relating to supporting students from the academic program in the classroom to special services or special education or SSTs or any of those pieces, supports for students. Casey would be responsible for the staffing and making final determinations of the hiring of who will be whether it's teaching or classified employees. She'll continue her work with outreach and will be that main point of contact for our families. So there's a lot that goes into all those pieces. The support that Biggie will be providing is the areas she's been well versed in past years, and in terms of all aspects of business services, but working with the budget and the financials, been on the finance committee, and is an integral part of the development of budgets and keeping track of how we're spending our money and that we're doing it in a prudent way. We'll continue with student records and payroll and human services operations, those kind of things. But the responsibility for those will be on Biggie. And importantly, Biggie would be the signatory for banking, credit card, other official documents that we have to sign that would typically be signed by executive director. It would be Biggie who would be the signatory. So those two need support. And one of the pieces of this is an unknown, and that is the third area there, which is Nazmia, who we are awaiting her return, and we don't know exactly when that will be. And so in the meantime, we would be continuing with our teacher on special assignment, which is the IB coordinator, Angel. Angel does much more than just IB coordination, but the IB pieces, the training, the renewals and applications, visits by the IB folks, that's, she's totally responsible for those. She also coordinates grade level team, our academic teams. That's where the rubber meets the road of planning, getting things ready for an entire grade level to be IB compliant and coordinated with the program. She's been helped with testing of the LPAC testing and has been in ELD support. She is our CASP testing coordinator. That's a very busy time of year right now. And importantly, does general supervision and student behavior support. So that's an ongoing piece of the puzzle, and Angel will be very much relied upon for that. Because Nazmia is not here at the moment, it's going to be extremely important to start the year with someone in that role. And so it says TOSA and / assistant principal, and Kirsten Paul is the one who is listed there. Kirsten is currently in her administrative program. That does not, her administrative credentialing program, that does not complete until December. So what we are suggesting is that she is a teacher on special assignment next year and starts the year as such, and really kind of fills all the pieces that Nazmia had been doing this year. So the big focus, though, we're going to ask her to focus on middle school as coordinating the teachers, and especially following students and student behavior, and really being the go-to on that. She will be involved with special education, particularly at the beginning of the year, but I'll explain what will happen when Nazmia returns. Student services, so she's the right-hand person for Casey on that. She will be the ELD coordinator, do the general supervision and student behavior, is the daily contact for staff if someone's not coming in. And that's a daily, every morning, making sure we have staff coverage, involved in charge of arrival and pickup. This list could go on 3 more slides, but you get the idea. There's a ton of things that need to be in place to support. So then it begs the question, what about when Nazmia returns? What we are suggesting is that these duties be divided up, and the focus for Nazmia will be a continuation of special education. Currently, we have we contract out for a coordinator of special education, and that's been the last couple of years. we want to be able to move away from that model. Even though the person is doing a fantastic job, it's a very expensive piece of the puzzle. And we want to be able to have an in-house person who is that coordinator. And so Nazmia would be training to become the SPED coordinator along with an assistant principal. So the model would be that we have two people who are at this level who are supporting the overall program, and we're pulling some consulting or contracting funds that we currently spend and weaning away from those. It also means grouping together some of the pieces like social media coordinator, which we had previously been paying Nazmia Expert for. That would become a part of the position. And some of the other coordinator positions that could be a part of. So between these folks, that's who will be the support level for Casey and Biggie. And it's an unknown as to how quickly Nazmia is back, but we've talked to the folks on this team, and that they're ready to provide that support. We do feel there's some other things that need to be in place. So there are some supports that are important. One is we've brought on a independent study technician. That's Anita Collins. And she works just limited hours a week. She's actually added some hours because she's been filling in at the front desk, but that won't be the case next year. So we're looking at, can we expand this role and eventually transition it, because Anita she's already retired and came back kind of as a support for us, but she's going to be transitioning back into retirement. And this is where we see getting that position that we've kind of always talked about, a business support help coordinated with independent study, which has become its own beast. And that would become a full-time position. So that would be not at the start of the year, but transitioning from there. And another piece, as we were trying to think this through, Ryan was extremely helpful in making a suggestion of something XED could do to help during this interim time, which is XED could do the entry of invoices for payments, and he would use that as his means of training some new people, and he'd be able to train them the way he'd want to on this. And so we're appreciative of that, and I think that will make a big help in terms of freeing up some time for Biggie, and they'll structure that so that there's separation of duties, and get that coordinated. We'll probably need to, in the fall, have that be an adjustment into our policy for business, office, and finance. Another area that the SEL campus or pieces that have really supported us. I mentioned the campus safety monitor. We've also had what we call an SEL campus safety person, and that's Layla McLaughlin, and our campus safety monitor, Kimberly Ramirez. We've also increased this year the amount of time Chris Massey Rhodes has been able to serve students. And so we want to continue on those higher levels, which includes not only during the day, but also through our ELOP program. So after school, we've added an SEL component that Chris Massey Rhodes has been working with Aaron Hill in an after school program that we want to have continue next year. And then finally, adding one full-time IA position for it would be shared between the two second grades, and we would continue with the shared IA position in the first grades and 1 per classroom in TK and the Ks classrooms. And then we would be adding 1 BII position. And while that's special education, our BIIs also support in supervision. So having additional people available and able to support and watch kids during recesses and lunches and transition times is extremely important. So all of these pieces together, we feel we can have a very strong support for the staff, for students, for families during this time of transition. Is there any question?
Chris, this is incredible. Thank you. We're not operationally into the day-to-day, so I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to let the experts kind of judge, and I'll start with Casey, then Biggie. Casey, give me your 2 concerns with Chris's proposal.
My 2 concerns just is we'll have that open position that Nazmia we just don't know when she's going to come in. So that's kind of my biggest one. And then my second concern would be just onboarding a new person. That being said, that second concern is not really that big of a concern considering who the person will be.
You're talking about the ED, the potential new hire.
No. I'm talking about the
the restructuring. Got it. Yep.
assistant principal part.
Yep.
Yeah. So no concerns about onboarding in that sense because she already knows everything about the school and has been working really closely already with admin as part of her credential program throughout this year. So really it's just there's a lot that's going to happen next year. And so any restructuring is just going to take its toll on getting used to a new way of working together.
All right, Biggie, same question.
There's just gonna
that looks a lot more like 2. This list seems longer. Good.
No, it's just gonna be a lot of work, and we have a lot of things coming up next year with IB, with WASC, with charter renewal, and the concern is just that there's hopefully enough time to also do these things aside from the daily operations of the school. So the strategic thinking forward, where we would want the school to go, and Casey and I have a very good picture of what we think would be a good next step for the school in a lot of regards when it comes to charter renewal and things like that. But there will be a lot of time spent for daily operations. However, I think the support system is really good, especially when it comes to the people that you see right in front of you on that slide. So they are very strong. They know the school very well. They are very motivated. So so I think it's gonna be a good thing, and the students and the families will not be impacted by it. I'm very confident that it's going to be a lot on the back end, and we will have to just see how we can get all that managed. But I'm very confident that the students will get what they need, and that teaching will be really good, and that we have all the supports on that end. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a lot of work.
I think the most important thing to keep in mind, Biggie, is like all the strategic objectives we need to pause on. Thank you for your honesty. I really appreciate it. And I think, Chris, the only other thing I would like to see in this proposal is the plan for the contract. I'm sorry, the charter renewal and the contractor that's lined up for that. Do we have any headway on that
I think, you know, the timing of that is the good news on that. The timing of that, I think by the time that hits full force, that Nazmia will be back, and that's a good thing. You know, in terms of the regular operation, I can report back on that one in the upcoming meeting with regard to if there's any leads on support, you know, outside support. You know, we certainly have had A+ Charter Consulting is very familiar with our program, and that's something we could explore with them. You know, that's a possibility. If it's you know, later in the year after my 6-month moratorium, I can be a possibility for that, for parts of that as well, in the spring.
Thank you, Chris. Big shoes to fill. I'll stop talking. Frank?
Yeah, would be interesting to see what I mean, we're basically losing payroll and we have to buy up all these things. Is that, you know, would we see the actual dollar amounts below it, right? When you distribute, and it has to come from me as the finance chair, right? So we're saving your payroll, we're buying up all these services and we're spreading it out. Is it cost neutral? Question mark.
Yeah, I think the short answer is this is pretty well cost neutral for the time being. There's so many unknowns that I can't say that with like when does Nazmia come back? When do you hire on the new ED? Those are big questions. But in terms of is all of this able to be done within the budget that we are going to be that we'll be presenting and approving at the end of June? I think the answer is a very solid yes. All of this is being put into that budget. So yes, on that front.
I leave the workload question to the expert, Catherine. You know, so.
Sam?
Thanks. So, you know, in the previous section, we were talking about the necessary interventions and continuing to focus on student achievement. With this, do you see any impact on the ability to coordinate or deliver on that plan?
With regard to student achievement, yeah, I think I'd like to think no, that it's not going to have an impact, but I also have to be realistic that anytime you're you know, working through a transition, that's at issue. But we've also you know, we've had times where we've been able to work through those transitions and you know, still come out okay. The example that I would say is going to distance learning and coming back out of that. So I think our track record is good on it, but is that a potential? Sure. It could be an issue, but I don't think it'll take, you know, 10 steps backwards.
Katrin?
Are there any aspects, and I feel like my question is in the same line of your questions, Yasir, are there any aspects of the role of ED that are under this interim staffing plan not covered?
So I think all the normal pieces are covered within our, you know, making sure we're applying for Prop 39 and making sure we're doing all those things. That's all covered within this. I think what Yasir brought up with charter renewal, that one we need to, you know, figure if we can provide some supports that are in there. We have some other things that are big that are happening, which is WASC. We have WASC accreditation, where we have, I think it's the 2-year mid-review that's coming up. And we also have IB, where we're getting some reviews that are happening next year. We are hopeful those will happen in the spring. So that will be at a point where we should have almost, kind of a little extra help and support. So I think, yes, it's within this system, as long as we don't get overloaded in the fall. That by the time we get to spring, I think we're going to be able to have more options and more people in that situation. You should have the assistant principal back, and you'll be looking at having an ED on board. So those are two major pieces. I wouldn't want to commit to expensive solutions that are 6 months or 8 months away. I think those can wait until you're closer to that to make those determinations, but have them in the back of your mind and kind of in the back pocket. That if you need to go there, that it's there. And from a financial point, to Frank's point, this may be the year that you have to draw a little bit on reserves to get through what's not a typical setup. And so, we won't set it up that way, or we'll hope not to, in terms of the budget. But I think that's something realistically that the board might in 6 months have to figure out, okay, we have to expend $50,000 on this or on that, because the need is there. So I just say, keep your options open.
Thank you. And thank you to you and your team, of course. I think you've developed a solid interim staffing plan, distributing the responsibilities. I also want to say thank you definitely to Casey and Biggie, but also to all the teachers who have agreed to take on those additional responsibilities. And it's really great that you are willing to step up and take this on. And I think that together we can all, make our way through these unprecedented somewhat times, at least for me in my role as a board member. I really appreciate it. Is there going to be some kind of recognition for the additional efforts and workload, those who are taking them on?
Yes, for the folks here, the jobs that they will be doing during the interim time, we are going to develop a stipend, like a monthly stipend, that is for the additional responsibilities that specifically are being picked up and covered by Casey and by Biggie. So that's where the major pieces are, and the other folks, it's their positions that they're morphing into are growing a growing piece at the assistant principal level.
Okay. How is the cooperation or the collaboration with the board going to work? I assume Biggie, Casey, you are going to attend board meetings in Chris's stead, and we're going to work together this way.
So the way I would see that occurring is, yes, both of them will be in there, and then they'd be responding to the particular areas that are of interest. Biggie would be setting up the business of board meetings in terms of agendas and making sure that that is happening. But she does, and I mean, she basically sets those things up now. So that's Biggie would be your direct point of contact for things board related, but anything related to questions of academic program, you'd go to Casey, and dividing it up that way. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and I yield the rest of my time because I see that Frank has a follow-up.
Go ahead, Frank.
So I encourage you to think through a worst case scenario. If what would happen if one of the key pillars breaks away for which reason soever. It's just conceptually you have the manpower just somebody has an accident or, can't attend, and how would that look like? Just, think for the unthinkable, the black swan here for a second. How would that look like, and what would be the next step, if something were to happen to one of our key staff members? It's just a recommendation. And then the second piece of it is, just make sure that there are no burnouts, because we're missing, we're overtaxing the staff here, and there's only so much you can or should be doing during the day. And what else can be done in order to support them? And I'm all for it, because I don't want to have any burnout here where anybody, is anybody finding a worst case scenario, finding a workers' comp exhaustion claim. So these are the two comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank
you. Sam.
No further questions. I do want to echo the thanks to you and your team for designing this and for everyone stepping up.
All right, no further questions. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Related to that rounds out my ED report. Sorry that it went on on so long. We have we'd set it up at the end of the meeting, but I think it might make sense to do it now, is to follow up with the report of the executive search. And I can have Christina join us, but it seems to fit where we're at right now, and she's available to join us. And Casey, is she in the queue?
Yeah, if she's not, it's okay, Chris. We'll just, I don't think we need her. If she can join, great. If you can text her, because we'll just keep going.
Okay.
I think she said she's free like after East Coast time. Yeah. All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the financials for April 2023. Is there a second?
I second.
That's from Frank. Go ahead, Chris and Frank and Ryan.
Just 1 second. All right. I'm going to share again. All right, this takes a moment. Okay, so financials. And we'll move fairly quickly. These have been reviewed by the Finance Committee, and not enormous changes, a little bit better. So Ryan, would you go ahead and guide us through this?
Hello, everyone. This is our financial presentation as of the close of April. In this presentation, we have attendance data through month 8, which is a significant month because it marks our P2 reporting period for LAUSD. As of month 8, we had 401 students enrolled at a 95.4% average daily attendance rate. So our P2 for the fiscal year is 378.69, which is more or less on track with what we were forecasting. We are under enrolled by 25 students, but we have been holding our average daily attendance in the mid 95 percentages. Moving on to the income statement. As a reminder, because nothing much changed from the March presentation till now, but as a reminder for the total year, We are under enrolled, so that does have a revenue impact for our local control funding formula. So you'll see that we're experiencing a variance of $125,000 less than budget, but it's only about 2,500 different from the last presentation. Federal revenue side, we've continued, we're holding 30,000 less, and the main driver there has to do with our special education funding through IDEA. That's the federal portion, lower for the year due to lower average daily attendance, lower enrollment. However, it's just about $200 different from our last presentation. On the state side, that's our big variance for the year. And that has to do with a lot of one-time funding sources that we're not budgeted for. Primarily, it consists of $290,000 worth of hold harmless funding from the prior fiscal year that we were awarded for this fiscal year. It also includes funding through the Arts and Music Block Grant and the Learning Recovery Block Grant, which are two one-time funding sources that were awarded this year and we're utilizing this year, and we're also planning to utilize some of it in the following year as well. Other local revenue, despite being under enrolled, we're actually seeing higher funding in our AB 602 portion of special education through LAUSD because of the way the funding rates, there was a higher funding rate than originally budgeted for. So despite having lower enrollment, we are seeing higher funding through that revenue source. And we also received additional funding through the California State Lottery in comparison to what we accrued at the end of last fiscal year. We received more money, already received it, higher than what we originally planned on. So those are all positive variances. But again, only about a $6,000 difference than what we presented at the last board meeting. On the expense side, again, the same variances as we have been reporting. The big difference there is a savings in health and welfare benefits. Each month that's gone by, bringing us closer to the end of the year, we've been realizing savings in the amount that we've budgeted for our staff. So all in all, total expenses for the year are about $9,000 less than budget. And the expense variances that we've been seeing are still the same moving from March to April. Savings in certificated salaries due to open positions and timing of hiring, and benefit savings. On the operating expenses, we have an overage of about $206K. And if you recall, the big driver there had to do with an over allocation estimate for the 22-23 school year that was placed in our model. And that estimate for the over allocation penalty is $146,000. So that's in there as a placeholder. We don't believe that it's going to come in that high, but the bill has not yet arrived. Nothing new from the previous presentation. Our net income forecasted as of April is $409K at year end, which is $382K better than budget. Moving on to the balance sheet. We ended the month of April with just under $3 million in the bank, and we're forecasting year-end cash of $2.5 million with the $646,000 receivable for monies earned during the 22-23 school year, but not yet received. And for the most part, those dollars typically come in the summer months, July and August. But that is a $646,000 assumed receivable at the end of the fiscal year. That's it for the dashboard, Dr. Jones. Within this packet, we have our notes to the financials, income statement and balance sheet, as well as the check register that was reviewed. All of this was reviewed prior at the finance committee meeting. But if anyone has a question on any of these during the question period, I'd be happy to answer any questions around disbursements for the month of April. That concludes my presentation.
So a lot of good news.
Questions, comments from board members, Frank?
You're muffled.
Sorry about that. Questions,
Yeah.
comments from board members.
No questions.
Sam?
No questions, though I do have a comment that's somewhat related to financials. It occurs to me that one thing that we didn't see in your ED presentation was any sort of update on fundraising, and just tying that into financials, because that's money that comes into the school. So if we can have that for next time, that would be great.
Dr. Jones, would you mind scrolling to the top of the PDF, please? While it's not 100% current, Sam, I did want to point out that on the dashboard, we do, under grants and fundraising, for the month of April, have our actual year-to-date earned of $330,000, and that's money that's come in as of April 30th. So you'll see that our total budget for the year is $414K. So this does show receipts as of April. We still have, May and June to collect more money, but I did want to point out that we do have that metric here on the dashboard.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Katrin?
No questions at this point. Thank you.
All right, then moving on to the vote. All in favor to approve the financials for April 2023. Frank?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me. Moving on to the discussion for the upcoming year's budget. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. That one. Okay. So we are at the point where we're having a preliminary review of our budget. We are not at the end of our road by any means. And importantly, just last Friday, the governor made his May revision. And if you recall, the January proposal was made, and the May revision is what we build our budget on. And so we have some initial information about it. And the good news is it does not appear that there was some big, huge hit to education. There were some hits to some other areas in the state budget, and there were a few things that happened with education, but it was mostly pretty good news when we were expecting some bad news. So that's the kind of where things stand. We won't know the detail of what it means money-wise for another week or so, until all of that gets put into place by School Services of California, and then XED puts it into their model, and we figure it out from there. But based on what we know, we feel like we're in a pretty good place. So let me walk through what we're trying to do with the budget this year. So the goals this year, we want to grow enrollment, and the areas this year where we'll grow enrollment, 7th grade is the key, because we have 2 6th grades and we're planning for 2 7th grades and 2 6th grades. So that 7th grade roll forward, that's where we see growth. And the other area is TK and kindergarten. We were under enrolled in kindergarten this year, and we want to make sure that TKK is fully enrolled. And then there were other grade levels where we inched up just a tiny bit. We are looking to maintain our investment in what we've done with the MYP for exploratory and for language. We're looking to expand classified support staff, so adding positions, and I kind of referenced that in some of the interim plan. Continuing our specials programs for PYP, investing in professional development, providing intervention support. Those are all pieces that are we want to have as goals for the budget. And an important new one here, which is expand our Extended Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP, a specialized funding source, but a very involved program. And so with that in mind as goals, that Governor's May revision had a couple things in it. Well, it had thousands of pages in it, but a couple things that are important for us. Number one is that the COLA is not changed from January. That I didn't expect. I thought it would drop a little bit. So I'm very happy to see this, because it's for any ongoing funding that we do. In other words, if we're able to provide some kind of improvement in our salary scale, it has to be covered by COLA. What we do with our what we call step and column, that has to be covered by COLA because it's ongoing money. So those are the two key drivers of what this is, and I was pleased to see that it's at 8.2. There were some reductions, but the reductions were in one-time funding. So they took the instructional materials and arts and music block grant, and they cut some out of it. But interestingly enough, in terms of arts, there was also a if you recall in the last election cycle, there was a Proposition 28, which the voters put in as providing arts and music funding. And so they kind of said, well, you're getting this money over here, so we're going to take away this money over here. But as it goes, that's not a bad situation. Learning recovery money, it was a big windfall of one-time money that they're reducing. So those are real cuts, but they're not in the ongoing funding. Another thing that was helpful is that there is one additional year to spend ELOP funds. We wouldn't have been able to expend all of what we would have needed to, and having this extra year is going to allow us to make use of a larger amount of these ELOP funds. So that's good news. So overall, the Governor's May revision, I was expecting very bad news. What we got is neutral news, and I'll take that any day. Assumptions in the budget. We are planning for growth, and the number that we're looking for is 441, and that comes not a made-up number, but a number based on after our lottery, and looking at where things stand. So it's including growth at the middle school level, and particularly that seventh grade class, and having full-size kindergartens, as well as a few in other grades, just one or two up in those grades. But we think these are very, very realistic numbers. ADA, we are conservatively putting it 95%. We more typically would do 96%, but we just don't feel that that's prudent, given that we've had this issue of attendance. And so while we think we can, with independent study, beat the 95% number, we didn't want to put a 96% number in there and then be playing catch up all year. So that's the basis of the budget. What is included in this budget? Well, there's lots of things, our normal everyday program, but there's some extras that are either new this year or that we are reaffirming that we're going to continue. So a part-time on-campus intervention teacher, that's something we want to continue. Something new, the expanded ELOP program, which includes SEL pieces, the after-school sports, which has been really successful this year, first time doing it, and we're really pleased with how that's working out. And then also the addition of the summer, winter, and spring camps, which are a requirement to have those extra 30 days of school being open and available. So that's an important new piece. Also new would be the added instructional aid and also the added BII. So that's completed here, and also including our SEL aid and our campus safety monitor. So all that is included in the budget. Our PYP specials, art, Spanish, and PE, been a long part of our program. We are fully intending to continue with that, and they are a part of the budget. MYP Exploratory that we've been able to do through some outside groups to do coding and robotics. We're also looking to bring some of the arts inside with some in-house solutions. And so that's been put into the budget, as well as MYP language, Spanish and German, as we had this year at multiple levels, making that available in the MYP program. So specifically, what are we looking to do to support our staff? Our professional development, and we're going to continue on with multi-tier systems of support and other trainings, including IB training, which is fairly involved and fairly expensive. We're continuing with our benefits at $750 per month for our full-time employees. We are covering the STRS, STRS and PERS statutory increases. We have a 2.8% step and column increase. That's where people are moving forward on their annual scale, and we have to take that into account. We've increased the daily rate for substitutes by $10 in this year's budget, and what we're proposing and is a part of the budget that we've given to you is a 5% increase for teacher and classified salary scale. If you recall, last year or the current year that we're in, we gave a 5% increase, and we're planning for and feel we can cover ongoing an additional 5% increase. And I know that we've got to look at this in totality. We're looking at LA Unified and what's happened recently, and you see in the paper 21% raise. Well, that's a 21% raise across 3 years. The current year we're in and the next 2 years. Well, in the current year we're in, we already gave a 5% raise. We just did it early when you're supposed to, when the budget is presented, and now we're talking about another 5%. I think that there's room in the future to look to see more of this, and we'd like to see that be happening. So I think that we're on a good trajectory, and that we're competitive with surrounding charter schools as well with this increase. So that's a big piece, and that is included in this budget. For facilities, we've included what it would cost to have not only the pro rata share for the 17 classrooms under Prop 39, but also with the alt agreement for the 2 additional. So we have it all in there for 19 classrooms. We do not have an over allocation penalty because we don't anticipate that in 23-24. So included in this budget is what we presented earlier, which is the TK through 8th grade principal and the other 3 folks who are going to be with her and providing that support. All of that is included in this budget. So what do? Well, we need to review the budget itself, which what we've handed you right now is not currently in balance. It's about a $50,000 in the red. That's not a bad place to be where we're at right now, because we have a number of areas where we can try to adjust and look at, and I'll share those as we get into the details. We need to look at that in the detail of this. We'll find out what the May revise is really telling us, but we have a sense of it now, and monitor legislative what's happening in the budget in June, and include those adjustments in the budget model. We'll come back in our June 12th board meeting and review, and then make, final adjustments and present and approve our final budget June 26th at the board meeting then. Okay. So what does the budget look like? Let's second. So as I mentioned, at this point, we are still in the red to the amount. If you look at the what's here, the 22-23, that's our current year, and we're at 400 students, but we're budgeted at 391. So we're talking about the increase of about 40 students, and we're putting it at 95% budget ADA number. And we've put all those pieces that we've talked about into this, and it's in the detail. But the bottom line is net income, whereas for this year we're looking at being 400 to the good. We're still at 58 to the bad for next year, and a little worse the next year, and then into the positive in year 3. Years 2 and 3, we really shouldn't be focusing too much on. We really just need to focus on the year that we're in. And there are several things that we can do to adjust and get us into straighten out. So once we know the details of the May revise, and school services has given those numbers to XED, number one is our health benefits numbers. We've budgeted the maximum, and we never hit the maximum. So there's definitely tens of thousands of dollars of room to look at health benefits and potentially balance it out that way. Fundraising, we put just the minimum amount with assuming the same number of students as we have this year. So fundraising is one that we could increase. And this also has the full cost, projected cost of food service, and which is about $78,000. And this year that amount was $0. We don't know what it's going to be, but the indication, I believe, from the May revise is that the state of California is going to continue to pay in the same way it did. So LA Unified should continue to not charge us in the same way it did. If that's the case, just that would bring us into the positive. So we'll see where these things play out. I don't want to get too bogged down into the detail of this yet, but those are things that could happen. And I'm just going to open it up to Ryan if you want to add anything with regard to the budget. Now would be the time.
Well, no, the only thing that I would point out is that this is based on an enrollment of 441 students. So it is dependent on us, getting to that level. And I believe that Dr. Jones and Gigi have data to support the number that's in this model today. But I did want to flag that because that is a difference. That's assuming that the school will be growing by about 50 kids from 391 to 441.
No, we have 400 currently.
Okay, well, 40 kids. So I just want to point out, that's a big difference. And we do have data to prove that number is a good number to use, but I did want to flag it. The other thing that I would just reiterate is that last week the governor released his May revise, and this Friday, School Services of California is doing their workshop to dissect and explain what it means for the charter schools. So early next week, we should have our recommendations to share with Dr. Jones to apply to this model. I believe that we're looking at a LCFF COLA of a little over 8%, and a reduction, like Dr. Jones said, in some one-time funding sources. But we'll have more information to share after this week is over.
Yasir, any questions?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant with the enrollment, mostly because I am uncertain what we're doing to accomplish that jump, especially from a marketing and outreach standpoint. And yeah, go ahead, Frank.
The only thing which we didn't discuss in the finance committee meeting, which was why are we not expecting over allocation penalties next year?
Based on where we are through the lottery, we do not anticipate that we would be lower than 10% from the numbers that we have been approved for the coming year. So they did not approve us at the level we asked. They approved us at a lower level, and between that and having a really good first blush in the lottery, we feel that it's not likely that there's a over allocation penalty.
Okay. And then, just a comment on the, when you look at the assumptions and everything, there is a really marketing material in here when you allocate, like the federal government, there's these things over spending $10 billion on, making, bringing production home or subsidizing this or that. So I think there's flyer material in here saying we're investing in all these programs. The school continues to grow and investing in these programs. We're paying our teachers monthly, which may be sent to the, to the constituents, either and the prospects, so that they show up and say, hey, look, we're investing in all of this. In real dollars in our hand, making sure that the education for your kids is really top line. If you combine this maybe with the expected good CASP results, you have a total complete different narrative here. Thank you.
Sam?
Thanks. So going back to the enrollment question. So Chris, when you said that you're basing it off of what you've seen so far from the lottery, is that based on percentages of acceptances from offers made post lottery? And are we in a better place now than we have been in prior years? I know we budgeted for close to this number. We're about 15 off this year from the number that is being forecast for next year. So of course it is a big jump. I take the point that we're expecting our sixth grade to roll over into 2 seventh grade classes, but then that also means we need growth at 16 students somewhere else likely. And do you have the response rates to support that?
Yeah, where we stand, if you compare us to where we were last year, we're in a much stronger position. I recognize that we've had years where our numbers did not come in, and so we can look at giving it another pass and bringing this number down a bit, and being less aggressive on that front. That is something we can look at as we're bringing you the next round in the budget. So I'm kind of hearing that that's a concern. We'll take another look at it, and we can bring that enrollment number down a bit. But I don't think it needs to be brought down to some level that just to play it safe. I think we are in a better spot than we were a year ago at this juncture.
On what do you base that assessment exactly?
returned lottery, where we stand with people acceptance rates.
But how do
and-
we know that that wasn't one data point versus a prediction of future lottery outcomes?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow.
So you mean because we're getting more lottery applications, we're generally in a better position for the upcoming year, and you expect a similar number of lottery applications next year? Or do you mean based on the applications we have received now for the students we're going to have August and onward for the next school year?
The second one.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
Based on the numbers that came in from this year's lottery.
Okay,
and
I
how
understand.
that plays out to the start of next year. We're in a better spot than we were.
Okay.
But again, I hear you guys. So we'll take a look, and if we can bring that number down a bit, I think I hear what you're saying.
I mean, last year we had a pretty substantial drop off as well between lottery and August, right? I don't know. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Any further comments from board members? Frank, Sam, Katrin? I guess, Chris, you heard our comments. I think, though I admire the aggressiveness of the number of students, we are very gun shy now. So we will just leave it at that. And Frank, I think you heard our comments. So if you can try to reflect that more in the final, I'd appreciate it. The board members would too. So
Yeah, I think what we need to, in a perfect world, you want to have like a correlation table, and saying, why, like, we have these many applications and this has showed up over the last years. What's the fallout rate from here? And what's the floor and what's the bottom? What's the bottom? What's the floor and what's the top of the corridor, right? In which you could expect enrollment. And where does this 441 fall? So,
hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
as always, it's like, it's like, what do we approve? And anyway, I hear you, but we need to dig deeper into the enrollment and the likelihood of certain elements of how enrollment comes will materialize. Right.
But thank you guys. That was a good presentation. I appreciate it. Thank you, board members, for your scrutiny. All right, since that was discussion, let's move on to the next item. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Actually, no. If this is all right, I'd like to amend the motion to approve the signature authority for Goethe International Charter School for California Credit Union bank accounts for Biggie to start on July 1, 2023. Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
The only piece to that is we have to get the credit card moving.
Oh,
as
she
long as you
has to
understand-
have the thing?
Well, if we wait until July 1st, we won't have a credit card in hand until September.
But
But
That's the issue.
yep,
she
all
doesn't
right.
have to be a signer to have a credit card, though.
Okay.
Just so you know, Dr. Jones.
Okay, perfect. Then let's do it. I mean, I just want to make it clean. You know what I mean? Like Chris's last day is June 30th. Biggie should be July 1. Is that okay, Chris?
Yeah, as long as we're moving forward on credit card, because that we
Yeah,
gotta get that
absolutely.
happening.
Yeah. Brian, you good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, she doesn't have to be a signer to be authorized to have a credit card, so
Yeah.
I think that's appropriate.
I don't know how much discussion there is, but I think we kind of already agreed to the interim plan. So, but I'll open it up to. I mean, Chris, do you have anything else to add? I don't. Board members, Sam, Frank, no. All right, let's move on to the motion, to the ratification. All in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
All right, and then, so that was a signature authority, correct? So moving on, I'd like to make a motion I'd like to amend the motion to approve credit card for Gertrude International Charter School naming Biggie. So this is her getting a card, correct?
Right.
Um,
The card is in my name and the school, so we need
she'll
one.
need the authority, so I
Biggie's
rescind my
name.
motion to approve it because it's gonna take 3 to 4 weeks, I'm sure, to get it, so let's just stay on track. Is there any need, for this, is there a second?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I do want to point out that in this action item, it's important not only to grant authority for the credit card, but also to document the credit limit of that credit card that you are going to authorize. So the minutes should reflect the limit of the credit card that would be provided.
What is the limit? What's yours, Chris, right now?
Currently, the limit is 5,000.
Okay, so let me make an amended motion to approve the credit card for Biggie for a limit of $5,000. Do I have a second for the amendment?
Can we increase the level of for the credit card to make it a little easier for Biggie? Because we were pushing it in some, historically, the amount was between 2.5, but there's two invoices pending, which Dr. Jones used his own credit card for. He bought a shed, I believe, which I need to sign, which expanded it beyond 5,000. Can we do 7,500 or 10,000? What's the temperature of the board here?
I think it's fine. I mean, if Chris has had to put it on his personal, I'm fine with it, so I can rescind that and modify it to 7,500 if that's okay to the board members. All right, so Frank, is there a second for that?
Yes, second.
All right, then all in favor?
Can I ask a question first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam. Yep.
So I just want to make sure that it's on record that this is subject to all financial controls that go along with the approval of the use of the credit card and the approval of those charges through the finance committee. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Yes, we scrutinize it every month at the finance committee, and it's like one of the big things that we do.
If we do need to amend the financial policy in the interim, we will bring it forward to the board for decision.
Great, thanks, Frank.
Yeah, I think the limit on the finance policy is 5,000 as well. So.
Yes.
All right. Not to belabor the procedural point, do we have to update the finance policy first? Shouldn't we do that, or no?
I think you can take board action, and we'll go back and look at the thing.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right, then the motion is to approve credit card for Gertrude National Charter School for Biggie for a maximum limit of $7,500. Is there a second?
I second.
That's from Frank, the treasurer. All in favor? Sam?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
Motion is ratified. Update on other banking items. Go ahead, Chris.
So we're just kind of putting it out there that we've checked with California Credit Union, and they're solidly in a good financial position. But we also want to be sure that we're keeping an eye on what's happening in some of the banking world, and not talking about for right now, but something that you might want to consider is like, for instance, we have a Morgan Stanley account that we might want to pull some money and just have an extra FDIC insured account that it would be in a different bank. So it's just something to think about for the future, that we may want to diversify a little bit. And I know we talked about it. It doesn't make sense. You can't do it because we need to have like one account that we're drawing from all the time. But on the other hand, it might be prudent to have a couple of little pots out there. So just as we were trying to consolidate things, I think we just got to keep our eyes open on what's happening in the market. Frank, was there anything else on that?
No, not really.
I think it was Ryan had suggested to look into a credit line or line of
Oh,
credit.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
In
Vicky.
regards to the banking account diversification of banking accounts, that was the comment made in the finance committee. The other item was Dr. Johnson, Vicky, and just repeated for a second. A credit line. As finances are, the comment here is we should apply for a credit line, although we don't need it at this stage. But you apply for a credit line when you're doing well and not when you're doing badly. So now would be the time to apply for a credit line. We may not use it, and the cost to have it are minimal. And so I encourage us to go through the process of applying for a credit line as we are doing financially well, and we can bring that to the board from the finance committee for next board meeting.
Frank, are we gonna have time to do that by the next board meeting?
I don't know. We don't have to do it this year. We can just table it for another until we return from summer break. It's just now we're doing well. We have the funds in the bank account. So we don't want to do it when we don't have funds. Right?
No, I totally agree.
But it doesn't have to be next time. It can be
Yeah,
I mean,
I completely agree.
Yeah.
But perhaps like maybe August, first board meeting, like
Yeah.
first agenda
Yeah.
item. Okay, thank you.
All right,
That's
thank
very
you.
diligent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam?
Excuse me. So regarding the diversification of accounts, do we have any form of investment policy that would guide us in structuring diversification that would be aligned with, or is there anything that we need to modify to make that happen?
We do have it. Oh,
Sorry.
Frank,
Yeah,
go ahead.
we do have a financial policy in this. As part of it, we have an investment policy which was approved as part of our financial policies. So you can't go into pork belly futures. It's just that's not we're playing with public funds. There's a higher level of scrutiny of fiduciary responsibility which we need to adhere to.
And that policy authorizes us to move funds as needed for diversification, of course, taking into account the prudence of the investment that we're getting
Yes.
into. Okay, great.
Subject to board approval. We just can't go to the finance committee, or the officials can't just open a bank account. So that's not going to work.
Exactly. Thanks.
Yeah.
Catherine?
No questions.
All right, Chris, moving on to the vendor performance review.
Here, just a moment. In your Dropbox, and in most cases we have really good relationships that have been built over years. So the details are here. You're welcome to go through it. I just want to point out a few of them. Some of the key people that we have been with. I'm going to mention XED for many, many years. Our involvement with A+ charters, our involvement with Measure Ed. These have been longstanding, and we want to continue forward basically with the list. There were a couple that fell short. The one we've had the most difficulty with, there are three different items related to PowerSchool. One is just a student information system, the SIS, and that's fine. We've been using it for years. It's integral to what we do, and that part's doing just fine. We have Unified Insights, which has been the part that we're drawing, you know, a database and gathering information, and we're in our second year with it. There's still some tweaks that need to be done and some areas we want to have improved. But that one's going okay. The one that we're having a struggle with has been moving enrollment online. We went with Enrollment Express through PowerSchool, and we've had a lot of difficulty with it. I'm not ready to throw in the towel, but people are ready to throw towels at me. It has not gone smoothly. We are still going to get this out for the start of the year, but it needs to be looked at. If this system is just so unuser friendly that it's not functional, we will have to come up with a different option. So that's one that I think is an important one to bring out. But these will be the groups we'll be sending. Special education, we have a large number of groups that we've been working with and expanded, particularly in the area of speech and language. But we've been really happy with the groups that we have. The biggest group we use is TES, Total Education Solutions, and they have really stepped up their game from in the time I've been here. This is now into my 5th year. And initially there were some issues. It's far better. In fact, it's top-notch service that we're getting. So we bring this for everyone's review, and this will be a part of the approvals that'll be in next month when we approve contracts.
Without getting into the intricacies of the operational relationships with the vendors, I did mention to Chris that one of the items we should add to our goals for next year is to set up a regular review of each vendor from a competitive analysis standpoint, just to make sure that we do have the best and the most cost-effective contract with each vendor based on market analysis. So not this year, but preferably next year, set up some sort of schedule. Chris, how many vendors do we have total between the 2 pages?
I didn't count them, but I mean, there's 20 plus.
About 20, yeah. So if we can maybe set up a regular schedule to evaluate 4 of them for renegotiation every every year or something. So we go through a cycle of 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and I think part of it is looking at which ones have the largest contracts,
Correct,
and
yep.
then also looking at which ones are we feeling like there's any question of are we getting the bang for our buck? So
right, there's all I'm saying is there's a lot of people in this place, and I'm just glad that I'm just really happy for this document. It's something that I know Chris and I talked about and we worked towards. We finally got the grades in. It's great. But just because it is a public organization, it's always good to always revisit every vendor relationship and renegotiate our contracts on a schedule. All right, Frank, questions, comments?
Comments there is Chris Massey Rhodes. What's her name, Chris?
Yep.
Doesn't have a comment in the notes. Just I think from our observational point of view,
that would have simply been an oversight. The comment would have been very positive.
I'm just pointing out the observations, and then there are 2 ratings. There are 2 carriers. There was no ratings in there, so you have further down. So you may want to complete that. Reliable service doesn't have anything on a spectrum, and then there's another one which is Panorama Survey.
Okay, I will take a look at those.
Yep.
Sam?
No further questions. I agree with your idea of doing some sort of regular review, particularly of the high value contracts.
Katrin?
No questions or comments right now. Agree that this is helpful and should be reviewed periodically.
All right, moving on to the next item. I'd like to make a motion to approve the ED Search Committee Charter. Do I have a second?
I can second.
It's from Katrin. All right, so we have put forth a charter for the search committee, first draft. I welcome your comments and concerns and feedback. It's pretty straightforward. But anyway, I will open up discussion. Frank?
So I couldn't open it, but it didn't open it for me at least. So like I trust this is in good hands. I don't have any, you know, this is the stuff I really don't pay a lot of attention to, but I couldn't open it, so I haven't reviewed it. So go ahead and
Sam?
I also was not able to open it, so this is the first opportunity I have to read it.
Same,
So-
actually. If you don't mind, I think we need to talk about it a little bit.
All right, I will just trying to see if we can move forward through the agenda. I don't think so, right, Chris? It's probably a good idea to just pause.
Yeah, this would be chance to
Well-
read through it.
Yeah, we'll pause. All right, was that enough time for everyone? Is that
Yeah.
good? Sam says yes, Katrin says
Yeah.
yes. Frank, you good?
Yep.
Chris, I did notice one thing on the board president. I don't think I will be communicating with candidates. It should be the vendor, the recruitment firm. So that should be left amended.
Where
they're gonna-
was that?
Somewhere
Your
here.
responsibilities?
Yeah. Serve as a primary point of contact for communication with external search firms, but not candidates. Should be external search firms and the Board of Trustees.
Eliminate the word candidates.
Correct.
Also, Yasir, I thought you said that the board wanted this to be an odd number of committee members, but as it stands under A here, I think it's 8, so it's an even number of.
Yeah, I think that was based on my notes from our previous meeting because that was a feedback from Chris on someone from the
Just
GPA and the
saying
parent.
that because I wrote the notes from last meeting.
Oh,
I remember
okay.
that it-
Did I get
that
did I get it
was
wrong?
said
'Cause-
that you wanted to have an odd number of members, but if you decide differently, that's fine too.
Yeah, no, I think that's up to I thought I had written that down on a sheet, but yeah, I did want an odd number, but I think from a stakeholder group that we need all these people. Does that make sense? like a
So
member of
there
the
are two-
faculty.
two board members, two administration team members. And that's 4. And
On
then
your last list, you didn't have the current executive director.
I think that's the difference. Yes.
the current
that's what it
executive
is.
director shouldn't be on that list because I wouldn't be there past,
That is
I'm
true.
helping
You're
out
not going to
right
be there
now, but
after.
That's
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, that's what shouldn't be there.
But you're going to be there until June to
Right,
facilitate all of it. So that's why I
yeah,
kept
I'll
it in. So.
facilitate, but I don't need to be a member of the committee.
All right, that's fine. We'll take that off. That's what it is.
Okay.
All right. Frank, questions, comments?
None.
Sam?
So one question I have is whether the board would like to empower this task force in developing the job description without coming back to the board to confirm that. In my mind, I think it's important for the board to have an opportunity to hear that recommendation and say yes or no to that final job description, as that's the position that we're responsible for hiring for, and to make sure that we have an opportunity to ask any other questions of those board members who are members of the of this task force, or to have items that might go back to think about, how stakeholder inputs were taken on. I'd like to see some closer tether between the board and the final output of this group.
So on that note, I think we're going to have that discussion about the timeline. So the purpose of this group is number 1, advisory. Number 2, it is to facilitate in a much more efficient search process. So we'll talk about that in timeline, but the way I see it is this group would be, for example, present in the stakeholder, the town hall, right? This group would
Right.
help facilitate the questions for the survey. The group would help facilitate and support the questions for the candidate pool, those kinds of things. But ultimately, I would come back to the board and say, these are the questions. This is, the format for the town hall, and that's going to be a little bit more clear in the town hall. But absolutely, the board is going to have a working session with Agility once all the stakeholder feedback's taken to say, this is the candidate, this is what it's going to have 2 sessions. One is going to be, okay, we've gotten the feedback from the stakeholder group. This is ours. Agility is going to come back to us and say, this is our profile. And then the board's going to ratify that before June 30th.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the roles and responsibilities as it's defined under committee members doesn't make it clear that some of that final responsibility for, or maybe it's under the established search criteria, it doesn't make it fully clear that the board has the responsibility for ratification, because I read it as vested within this group. So that's what I'd like clarified.
Support, yeah. So why don't we amend it to say support the definition of desired qualification, skills, experience required for the executive director position as outlined by the board? For that first sentence, does that work?
Or for ratification by the board.
I mean, the board will outline it, and we'll ratify it. However, we will ratify it in order. Yeah, that's fine. We can add that language too, as outlined and ratified by the board. How's that?
Okay.
Develop jobs description announcement. Why don't we strike that next sentence, develop position description and job announcement for circulation, because that'll be the responsibility of Agility. That's all right, Chris. And support candidate recruitment and screening, and that can stay.
Under C,
Under C, correct.
strike the sentence,
Develop, yeah.
Position description and job announcement for circulation. Yeah.
Sam, any other comments?
I think that's it. And I agree with the removal of Chris from the group. That was my other comment.
Katrin?
With the edits that we have just discussed, I think this looks like it's overall in good shape and fairly straightforward. Appreciate the clarification between board and search committee responsibilities. I just wanted to confirm that indeed the committee is covered by the Brown Act, because I think last time we talked about that for a second there. We are as a committee.
We are not, and that has to be, I kept that on there just so everyone was absolutely clear. Since the majority of the board members are not going to be participating in this committee, that is something I'd like to strike from it, so that
Yeah.
the committee can meet, without all the constraints and requirements of the Brown Act.
Yeah, that's what I remembered, that we weren't covered by it. Thank you. Mhm.
So Chris, if you can strike that as well.
Okay, so that is the
Item 3 there, meetings and quorum, I would strike everything.
just-
The reference to the Brown Act altogether, perhaps.
okay,
Yeah.
but then we'd still have meetings in public.
Yes, yeah, exactly, but we don't have to announce it, for a general 3 days prior, and we don't have to be all in the same, school district, that kind of stuff. So for item 3, I would strike everything from the first 2 sentences.
Can you scroll down to item 3, Chris? Okay, great. You still want some level of quorum defined though,
Yeah.
so you can go
First,
to a
two
majority of the
sentences.
members, yeah.
Yeah, 2 sentences, sorry.
Okay,
And will we maintain the records of these minutes also on our website for the public to see?
Since it is not a Brown Act requirement, I would just record the minutes and transmit them to the board.
Agree. I think we don't need to go above and beyond here, especially since we will need to respect candidate privacy, especially in the earlier stages when candidates are not willing to make their candidacy public yet.
And actually, thanks for that, Katrin. Is there any particular need? This was my other comment as I was reading through. Is there any particular need to confirm either conflicts of interest requirements, so that the members of this committee are doing conflicts of interest checks over the candidates that they might be observing? I think that would be a good thing to add into here, as well as putting in some expectations of confidentiality of the materials that the members of the search committee learn, because Katrin, as you know, this is people's lives, people's jobs, right? And so we want to make sure that the members of this group understand the import of confidentiality with which they're being entrusted.
Yeah, let's add a section on confidentiality and make sure the board already has a code of conduct which outlines confidentiality for all matters in the public interest, especially in relation to human resources. But we'll have to make sure that it also exists for every member of the committee, and an NDA will have to be signed. So if we can put in some language on that, and I can do that, Chris.
okay.
I love the teamwork here, how we're building on each other's comments. It's getting better and better.
Yes, here in the very top of the document, I think it said that the board establishes the committee. Sam, would it then be automatically a Brown Act committee, or can it still be in some way written that it's clear that it's not a Brown Act committee, even though the board establishes it?
I'm not your lawyer on this one, Vicky. I'm not sure. I honestly don't know how
Vicky.
that
I think
impacts.
when the board establishes a committee, it might become automatically a Brown Act committee. So, except
That-
if it's temporary or something, there is
It's
some rule.
it's temporary if you go to the
And I think then you can get around it, but
Yeah.
don't.
it's a
completely-
task force. It is not a Brown Act committee. Absolutely.
Then maybe look that it's not called a committee.
No, if you want to scroll up, you'll see in the charter. This is very
Yes,
clear.
it's called a search committee.
Correct.
It's
Is a if
temporary, but
the
okay.
executive director search committee is a temporary committee established by the, so it's, yeah. It's not as stringent as it has been years ago. It's pretty straightforward, so.
I'm wondering if Christina might be able to give us a little guidance on this, what happens at other schools with regard to this, whether it is required as a Brown Act committee or not.
It's not, you're an ad hoc. Yeah, you're an ad hoc committee unless you have a majority of board members. So, I mean, I've never seen this process before. You definitely can do it, but I don't know that it's not required under Brown Act. Because you're an ad hoc committee unless you have a quorum of board members, and so you don't actually need to worry about any of the typical committee requirements.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Sam, you go ahead. You have your hand up. I'm just, yeah.
Thanks, Katrin. To that point, if we can make sure that we include the word ad hoc in here, because I think that's an important phrase to have in here for the purposes of the Brown Act.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to have this charter. I mean, this is a great thing to have for yourselves, but it's not required under law anywhere. So it's really just for yourselves if you want to have this as a guiding document for you. It's not at all binding, as far as I understand.
We'll just add ad hoc.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. We're getting close to time here. So, Frank, any questions, comments?
No.
All right.
May I? One last one.
Katrin, go ahead, of course.
When I establish search committees at UCLA, I like to make sure that committee members are being trained on implicit biases and understand how all of our recommendations as they pertain to selection, especially in those high profile roles, that we're all biased essentially. Do we have any intention to do something like that with the search committee members for this search? And that might be a Christina question, or might be a question for the rest of these of the folks on this call.
The answer is yes, but I think we're going to hit it in talking with Christina.
Okay.
All right. So if there's nothing further, move forward on the amended charter for the ad hoc search committee for executive director. All in favor? Frank?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
Okay. Review of the tentative timeline, and I will hand this off to Chris and Christina.
Okay. All right. Christina, thank you for being so patient.
You're
We kept
welcome.
pushing it back further and further in this meeting, which is why we don't always go over our time limits, but we definitely did today. We wanted to have a chance to talk through with the board what the plan is in the time frame, particularly when I'm still on board through June 30th. And I'm going to just turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, so thank you so much, Chris. And just to clarify, folks have seen the timeline information that we sent previously, right? I think it was a meeting or two ago. Julianne, you guys, okay, great. And then also have folks seen the survey information about the survey that we're distributing or, proposing to distribute? Did that go out too? Okay,
That
good.
was
I would just like
Dropbox.
to, I would just like to point out that the survey was very vanilla. It was pretty much just a construct to get started, but we wanted to make sure that the board had eyes on it. The purpose of the survey is going to be to distribute to all the stakeholder groups. Board feedback is asked for and appreciated, and we'll have another meeting where we can review all the questions and comments on questions that are actually going to go into the survey as well. So.
Okay, great. Yeah. And honestly, the survey is high level and vanilla, partly because we use a similar structure for multiple clients. And so it enables us to give you some comparison. And also because we want it to be pretty streamlined. We found that when we ask people a lot of questions, they don't respond, or they're not as likely to respond. So we try to keep it very high level for that reason. So just to give you a sense, hi, I'm Christina Greenberg from Agility. I'm one of the co-founders of the organization. I also lead our client services practice. I've also sat in your seat. I spent about 11 years as a board member for 2 different California's single/small, like two schools, site charter schools. Also, I spent about 11 years doing that in California as a board member. So I've lived that life, as well as spending about 20 years working with charters and recruiting teachers, leaders, others, all types. So definitely work that I've done for a very long time and enjoy doing. I normally in Northern California, I'm actually back east right now because we have a team retreat this week. So yeah, looking forward to, glad I was able to connect with you all this evening after my flight, after I got in tonight. In terms of timeline, so as I think we've talked about before, there's a very natural timeline for when folks like Chris are looking for jobs. A lot of folks, if they're currently in a school environment, understandably, they don't want to leave mid-year, which makes a lot of sense. Or by this point in the year, they've already kind of made decisions on where they're going to be next. So what we proposed, and what I know Chris and Julian and others of you have agreed to and said made sense, was to do our initial fact finding right now in terms of the kind of person you're looking for to lead your school, and to get that information before school gets out, so we can get that really great data from all different stakeholders, families, staff members, students, all of you, hearing a little bit more about what you're looking for, and then launching the actual recruitment phase in the fall, so that we can, and probably doing it potentially in 1 or 2 stages. I know there's a lot of interest in trying to get someone in if possible mid-year. So what we proposed was to try to do an earlier fall initial just sprint outreach, seeing who's interested out there, but then also being open to the fact that if we don't find someone earlier in the fall, then we might want to go on the traditional recruitment timeline, which is launching around Thanksgiving, doing kind of recruitment and outreach through the early in the new year, doing committee interviews sort of later January, and then / early February, and then finalists kind of late February, early March. So we're going to do an initial phase to see if we can get people in the early fall that are excited about the organization and the role. And if that doesn't pay off, then we can do a sort of a second round a little later when folks are more likely to be interested. So that's sort of the overall timeline. But before school gets out, we do our discovery process, which will be talking again with stakeholders. We do usually a few focus groups. We'll do one-on-ones with folks that report directly to the executive director, and then we'll distribute the surveys you've seen. And we also will do a working session with the board. And I think, Chris, we were just finalizing dates for that, ideally, but do a working session with the whole board where we'll get your feedback and ideas on the kind of person you're looking for and what your priorities are in terms of profile. My colleague Nora and I are planning to come to campus, I think on June 6th, is that right? Chris, is that the Tuesday? Okay, so we're planning to come to campus on June 6th to meet with people in person. And then also we're happy to do some Zoom meetings with you all on the board and with others. I think we talked about a Zoom town hall also potentially with families and staff if people have questions. So
We're looking for the town hall the night before.
Great. Okay, that's yeah. It wasn't okay. Great. So we did finalize that for the 5th. Okay, wonderful. So yeah, just curious if you have questions for me. Anything you'd like to ask about the search, about the timeline, about our experience, any of the above.
Frank.
I actually have no questions about this.
Sam.
No questions. I'm excited to get this kicked off, and we're excited to work with you.
Katrin.
No questions. We're pretty easy going that way, aren't we? No, looking forward to working with you, Christina.
I just wanted to mention the issue that you brought up, Katrin, about training for the committee, because we did talk about that. Christina, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the benefits you have is that, our team does dozens of these ED searches for small to mid-sized charters a year. And I've done, I don't even know how many, multiple, probably 20 or 30 of these over the last 15 years. So it's something we do very frequently. So there's some informal training that we do along the way, just as kind of being your guides as people that do this all the time, in terms of what are things to be keeping in mind, whether it's confidentiality as you brought up, whether it's internal candidates, I don't know if you have any, whether it's just how are we ensuring that we're running a really thoughtful process that doesn't have bias as much as possible, right? It doesn't have bias and doesn't have other issues in it, as well as ensuring that we're moving along quickly enough that we're getting candidates, keeping candidates excited and engaged, but also doing a really thoughtful and equitable process. So those are all things that we will help you balance. In terms of specific training for the committee, we will do a kickoff meeting where we kind of remind ourselves of what we're doing together, what our work will be, what our commitments will be to one another. And then we'll, along the way, in addition to kind of, again, less formal training, we have before you'll do your interviews, we have what we call our anti-bias, equity, and selection training that we'll do with the committee. We also offer it to all board members. So if you all as board members would like to do it with the committee or would like us to do it a second time, it's a really great opportunity. One of the things I find, and one of the processes I really think is important about this, entire search process, is that you're forming an identity as a group, making a decision together you've never made before, right? Like, I don't think this exact group of people, either as board members or committee members, have sat around a table and hired an executive director together, right? This is a new endeavor for all of us. And so part of that process is figuring out, how are we going to work together? How are we going to do a really thoughtful, objective job? How are we going to make sure that we're really weighing the pros and cons of candidates? How are we keeping front of mind what the community really wants to see in these people? And so part of that equity and selection opportunity is for us to talk about that as a group and really get clear on what are our own biases that we see in ourselves, what are the biases we see as potentially as a group, and how are we going to mitigate against that and really lead a great process. And so that's something that we'll do together, in addition to other conversations that we'll have along the way. And that's part of our team's job, right, is to help be your guides through this process. I think I said this to Chris and Julian earlier. Our job is part grief counseling and part family therapy so much of the time, because we're really helping you move through this moment. It's a really important moment for your school. And so we'll be doing that together.
Thank you, Christina. So on that, if there are no more questions, Chris, for the preliminary materials, we just have the stakeholder survey, right?
Yeah, that was in there. Yes.
Are there any comments from the board on the stakeholder survey? Anything we missed? Again, as Christina mentioned, it's open-ended by design to solicit as many of the responses, which means that they've got a lot of work compiling it, which I'm all for. So
yeah, and just quickly on that, just so you all know, thank you, Julian, for mentioning. I should have mentioned that. We'll put together a report from all the stakeholder conversations as well as the survey data that you'll get as a board, and the committee will get first, and then we'll share with you as a board. We usually figure out how unvarnished that is, given it's a public board meeting, but we'll definitely share those findings, and happy to share them in public session as well as privately with the committee. And that will be a summary of all that we hear, both in terms of the data as well as just anecdotally. So you'll be seeing the results of that all in a nice package and a deck that you'll be able to review at your leisure, and then we'll walk you through.
Just on that note, we, as I mentioned to you, the board members prior, we were planning to have 2 separate special meetings in regards to the ED search. We've already conducted our first one. The second one is going to be a working session with Agility, open meeting regarding the stakeholder feedback and the composition for the job profile and the candidate description, all those things. The goal is to ratify, so is to take that feedback, digest it, communicate our concerns, comments, additions, modifications to Agility so that they provide a candidate profile and the job description for us to ratify in a open board meeting for our 2 meetings in June. So just keep that in mind. So we should everyone should plan on having 1 more special meeting, and we have some dates on that in our next session.
Yeah, what I was looking at is in the month of June, we
Hang
have
on, Chris, before we move on. So anything else on the preliminary stuff before we go into new business and set up meetings and stuff? Everybody good? Christina, do you want to stay on? Because this impacts you as far as that meeting's concerned.
You guys can send me a note. It's honestly, it's like almost midnight, so I should probably go to bed. But you guys can send me a note with whatever you've decided, Chris. You know our availability, so we should be good.
All right. Thank you, Christina, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, first, so moving on to new business, follow-up meeting times. Frank, I'm so sorry, but we were talking about meeting times and we tabled it until this discussion at the beginning. What were you talking about? You're on mute.
Yeah, let's table it. I said to table it to this point, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. What was it? But what were we talking about? It was important.
I can't recall. This is the beginning of Alzheimer.
Uh, we approved the special board meeting minutes. It was before we started our meeting. Well, Chris, we have a ad hoc search committee meeting coming up on Monday. It was the earliest we could get it with agility. We need to have a meeting, a working session with the board before the 2 June meetings, correct?
No, it could be in between.
Okay, it could be in between. So the purpose of that meeting, special meeting, I would imagine not to exceed an hour to review the stakeholder feedback and give comments to agility. I have asked them to provide us a candidate profile based on all the feedback from everyone, not except the board. So they're going to have a document that we can look at and we can say, this is what Antilli wants in an ED. You know, what does the board think about it? And we can, you know, excise it, change it, modify it, et cetera, just so we have a working document to make changes to and then ratify in the following meeting. And that meeting is going to be between June 6th and when's our last meeting, Chris, for the year, June 20?
What I'd suggest on this is stick with our Mondays, and we have a Monday, the 12th is our annual meeting. That's already
Okay.
on the calendar. I would suggest we do the June 20th.
No, the 19th.
Is
right?
that a Monday?
19th.
June 19th.
Frank, I
Mhm.
just
Oh,
remembered
know why. That's why the
We're talking
20th
about-
is a Tuesday.
right, but we're talking
it's
about,
because-
Frank, I remember what you said. It's about quorum and getting, when are we going to have these meetings to have quorum? I have no problem flying into meetings. I would just prefer to get heads up so I can get airfare. Otherwise, it's going to be ridiculously expensive.
So I'm sorry. Yes, the 20th we had put down as the date. It's a Tuesday. The 19th, which would be the Monday date, is Juneteenth, the holiday. So I'm wondering if the Tuesday, June 20th, is a possibility for people for a special meeting.
I am good for that. Anytime during actually, I'm good for it pretty much anytime. So you guys let me know.
Afternoons.
During the day, like business day, Frank, is
Yeah.
that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, Sam,
I will be out of town. I can try to join from wherever I am, but I will not be in Los Angeles.
Katrin.
That week should work for me. Tuesday seems like, yeah, Tuesday seems okay.
So Tuesday afternoon, Frank, so afternoon is before to wrap things up by what? 4
Well,
o'clock?
if you, I mean, afternoon starts at 12, right? At noon.
Yeah.
You know, I have nothing in my calendar thereafter.
So would you prefer, should we do like 6 o'clock, like a regular time, or like
No,
between like
no. That, I mean, I'm in the office, so.
Okay.
So I prefer them during business hours, maybe 4 o'clock.
4
Okay.
o'clock.
I'll
o'clock?
commute at that time, sorry.
Oh, she has a
Then
commute.
do it earlier if you can.
How's 2 p.m. Pacific Standard?
I have a 2:30 to 3.
Why don't we do it over lunch, 1 o'clock?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So over lunch, so that's what, 12 to 1?
Yes.
So that's a yes for Katrin. Sam, you good?
Oh, not 12 to 1. I was saying I have to actually attend an IND webcast Juneteenth. So so it
12.
needs to be 1
1 to 2.
1 to 2.
1 to
Okay.
2. Sam, you good with that?
I will try to join if I can, but I won't be. I have this problem that I'm out of town for most of June.
Yeah.
and
So quorum's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So Chris has got to get in touch with Pete.
Yeah.
He's going to be totally surprised when he comes back. Everything's going to be all changed. Okay. So June 19th, 1 to 2 p.m. Sam will be joining virtually. We will still need quorum. I will need to
June
know.
20 though.
Sorry,
20th,
June
not
20th.
19th.
June 20th. Yes, yes, yes. 1 to 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second,
That's from Frank. All in favor? Frank?
I.
Sam?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That's a yes for me. You guys are great. We went a little bit over, a lot over, but now the fun starts, huh? The June meetings.
Ha.
Bring your pitchforks and axes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Talk
Have
to
a
you guys
good
soon.
night. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.